Very exciting. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Design System London. I'm going to start off by saying this is our first hybrid event, so who knows how it's going to go. We have people on the live stream. We have people in the audience. We were supposed to go fully hybrid and have 2 people speaking here and 2 people online. But the reason why we're here in the first place is obviously because of COVID, partially. And one of our speakers, unfortunately, got COVID. But he's still going to join us. So now we have 3 remote speakers, a lot of people in the audience, and 1 speaker with us. Can't get any better than that, right? Exactly. So first of all, sorry, I'm just trying to find out that we actually... Are we on the live stream as well? Yes? OK, so apologies to the live stream for my weird question. For the live stream, so before what we had people from everywhere. So we've had people from Mexico, from Brazil, from the US, from Lebanon. So I'm just trying to think what we have this time, because we have been asking people while they've been waiting where they are from. Probably should have put on my glasses as well, as you can tell. We got hello from the Ukraine, hello from Birmingham, from Lagos, Nigeria, from Heathfield in East Sussex, from London. Again, there's a lot of people from everywhere. Very exciting. So I keep on chatting, and I haven't even introduced myself. My name is Luis. I am head of product design at YLD. And YLD, as you can see on this lovely slide here, is the organizer and one of our sponsors. And we also obviously have our other sponsor, Beamery, which is why we're here in this space. So thank you so much to Beamery for sponsoring us and hosting us. And there's going to be a couple of words from them very soon. Oh, now we are on the live stream. I can even see myself. Things are getting weirder and weirder. OK, so... let me see to my notes that I've made, spent so much time. As I said, please be patient with us. It is our first hybrid event. We're very excited to be back. And who are we? So let's jump over to that. I've already introduced myself, finally. If anyone's interested in following me after all the bonkers banter that I'm giving, please feel free to do so. But most importantly, who are Design System London? So we started out at Digital Product London a couple of years ago. And then everybody started talking about design systems. So we were like, you know what? We're going to talk about design systems. And then so we changed. Oh, here we go. We're off. Somebody unplugged me. No? We're back. This is how you know you're live. This is how you know you're live. And it's how you cope with it. It's all going to be good. Don't worry. So as I said, we started off as Digital Product London. Our aim is to basically gather people to talk about issues, new exciting topics, things that are happening in the design world, including engineering. For us, design system obviously doesn't cover only design. Everybody knows that in this room. It's also product development in general and engineering. So one thing that we're really proud of is that we welcome speakers of all levels and experiences. And actually today we have some really seasoned speakers with us. And we also have some speakers with us, first-timers. So that's what the community is all about. So if anyone in this room is thinking, hang on a second, maybe I want to speak at an event in the future, do you know what? You can. You just have to come and chat to us. Anyone in a YLD t-shirt. I'm wearing a DSL t-shirt, but we have a few YLD people here. We will also share a link on how you can actually sign up through a form. So that's a little bit about us. What's going to happen this evening? Let's have a very quick look at the agenda. So the door's open. Welcome. Word from our sponsors is up next. And then we're going to have a first talk. I can actually see that one of our speakers is live sitting, and you can all see him. Francesco, I don't know if you know that we can actually see you. So we have poor Francesco doesn't know that, but Francesco is a great guy. He's going to give us a great talk. And now you all, by the time he joins us, you're going to feel like you already know him. So we have fantastic... There we go. Francesco, wave, wave. All right, brilliant. So as I said, we have 4 great speakers here. So first speaker is actually Francesco. Second one is going to be Andrey, who was supposed to be in person, but is now online. We are going to have a quick break, and it's going to be it's quite hot. So you might need a drinking break after a while. So 10 minutes, 15 minutes to, get some fluid in you. Third speaker, Jenny, one of our first-time speakers. She's joining us all the way from the other side of the Atlantic, from the US. Very excited about that. And then we have our speaker that is actually in person. Jules is going to help us wrap this up. OK, and we're off again. Brilliant. Oh, God, you got to love tech, don't you? Huh? Has anyone ever been to an event with a tech company that the tech isn't a problem? Like, no, clearly not. That's how you know you're live. Right, so enough about that. And the evening topics, just to reiterate as well. So we try to think of a theme when we do these things. And I was looking at the talks, and they're really great. And one little theme that we can probably look at is almost like a history line. So we're going to hear something about the first system ever to be seen on screen, and we're going to wrap up with a post-design system world. What kind of world is that? I mean, is it a world we want to live in? Find out. Stay tuned. No, someone says already. Stay tuned and we'll find out. Okay, so that's the evening's topics. Some quick logistics. First, I should mention is the code of conduct. This is for everyone on the live stream. Please use the chat. There is a chat feature there. If you have questions, we have a Slido. And then we obviously have social media as well, because otherwise people don't know that we actually exist if we're not on social media, so that's very important. Follow us on Twitter. Use the hashtag for this evening, hashtag DSL, hashtag design system. If you tweet about this tonight, we have our team who will then retweet and follow you, so please spread the word. For the conversation in the chat, I'm going to ask a question, because I was saying that it's hot here in London today. This is a unique day. It could be the last day of summer. I say that every time it's sunny in London, because you just literally never know. But if you are somewhere where the weather isn't as hot as here, or just tell us what the weather is like where you are, where in the world you are, and what the weather is like. We would love to hear that, and we're going to come back to that later. Reporting from a very hot London. One QR code to rule them all. So you might have seen them scattered around here. So this is basically for you to ask questions, follow us, join us, see all the recordings from previous events and talks, and find out more about YLD as a company. Check out our code. If you're interested in checking out what we do on GitHub, you can find out there, and see all our openings for the jobs. Oh, I see. I'm hoping this scan is working. Is it working? It's working. Okay, at least one thing is working. Brilliant. So I'm going to leave this up for a little second. For anyone that's on the live feed, we should have all the links posted. I'm quickly taking a look behind the screen. Yes, I'm getting a nod. So for anyone that's on the live stream, all the links are there for you, especially the Slido one. So for the Slido, it's basically if you have questions for the speakers, we ask you to just put them in Slido, and please name who the speaker is that your question is for, because it will make the Q&A a lot easier. And then we'll get everyone back at the end, and we ask all those questions. Okay, so a word from our sponsors. As I said, we are organized by YLD. I'm just going to take a very quick second to put on my YLD hat. So YLD is a digital consultancy. We help people with digital transformations. We're offering software engineering, product development, data analysts, and designers. So if anyone's interested in what we're doing, come and speak to anyone in YLD t-shirt. That's enough YLD. Thank you very much for letting us organize this. And now I'm going to hand over to our sponsor, and I want to welcome Mike. You're going to say a few words about Beamery.
Hey team, welcome, welcome. And I'm really excited to have you here. My name is Michael Patterson. I am one of the founders here at Beamery. I'm also our CTO. And it is my absolute pleasure, first of all, to welcome you here, and thank you so much for coming. For a couple of reasons I'm excited. One, it is probably the last community event we'll be running in this office. So let's send it off with a big bang. The bar is open. Let's go. And then hopefully you'll come back and join us at the new office when we get there. But more importantly than that, I am excited to talk about design systems. At least listen about design systems. You don't want to hear me talk about design systems. This is me. We'll move on. For those that don't know that much about Beamery, we are a talent lifecycle management. We're on a mission to create a world where we have fair and equitable access to work for anyone, regardless of where they're born. We do that in a couple of different ways. We work with, first of all, we work with the biggest companies in the world. We create software for the biggest companies in the world, helping them attract, engage, and retain talent in order for them to grow the, let's say, the the workforce of the future, a more diverse workforce, a less biased workforce, a workforce that that trades in skills as a currency rather than CVs. A bit closer to home, love to get involved in the community, hence events like this is good for us, is good for everyone to be part of the discussion, to actually listen and learn, and as you'll see later on for Andrey, actually speak up about some of the things that we're learning. Now, for me, as CTO and founder, and first-time founder, and generally learning everything all the time, we have, in 10 years, I think, 9 attempts at UI kits, component libraries, skinning anything from, I don't know what it was. What was it? Bootstrap 1, Bootstrap 2, Angular material. We've done it and failed at most of it. And finally, as you will hear from Andrey later on, we are in the world of design systems, and I was the one that didn't want to live in a post-design system world because I'm just so freaking excited about where we are right now. Anyway, again, that's me. That's why I'm excited, and that's why I'm here to learn tonight. But we have a lot of people around from Beamery. We'd love you to have a chat with them. We also have a bunch of open roles. These are some of them. It's a myriad of different roles. I will say that we have a core front-end team who are looking for a designer, and they focus solely on building out our design system. And you'll hear from Andrey, the lead designer, on that project in a little while. You can see here, roles aplenty if you're interested. Anyway, sit back, relax, get some drinks, and then come see me in the bar as well. I'll be tending bar with Verity later on. Thank you all very much. And who am I handing over to?
Thank you very much, Mike and Beamery. So while I was at the back here, you know what they say, like, don't look at the man behind the screen. Don't look at the man behind the screen. I just found out that the audience live streaming right now, they can either see just the amazing slides or just me. So we're fixing that for the audience. So when someone is speaking, you will be able to see both the slides and the speaker. Okay. So without further ado, shall we get the talk started? I guess that's why we're here after all. How are we doing? Are we ready to call in? Okay, we need a little bit of time, so this is when I need to improvise with.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you tonight. My name is Jules. I'm a design advocate at zeroheight, and I used to work previously in agencies where I helped many clients set up and build design system. I also work in schools, guiding students about the design system issues and also the design current issues. And now I'm very happy to be able to share all my design system expertise to the whole design community and help this community build a better future for design system. Speaking of future, I really wanted tonight to share with you my vision about what this future could be for design systems, what the future of design system could look like. And as an introduction, you probably have noticed with my accent that I am French. And I thought that as an introduction, it would be very interesting to play with one of the most iconic, the most famous symbol of the French culture, which is the croissant. Because the thing is, a few months ago, I was just watching TV, and there was this documentary about croissant, how croissants were made in France. And I was quite shocked, actually, to learn that most of the croissants that you can buy in bakeries in France are actually not homemade. It's frozen croissant. And I'm sorry if you didn't know, I'm as disappointed as you. But what was even more disturbing and shocking is that they did a test and asked people in the street to try two different croissants, one homemade and one frozen croissant. And almost everyone preferred the frozen croissant over the homemade croissant. And now you're probably wondering, why is he talking about croissant? What is the point with design systems? Well, the thing is, while I was watching this documentary, I couldn't help myself thinking, are we doing the same things with our digital products today? Are we also, trying to automate so many things with design systems to make digital products more and more automated? And are we going to reach the same success as croissant, being able, for example, to completely automate a digital product that it would be even better than if we did it in a manual way? Well, this is clearly, the starting point of my thought on this topic. And before going further, I thought it would be interesting to look at the past so we can better anticipate the future of these design systems. The thing is, I don't think actually the design systems are so innovative after all, and it actually makes sense that we talk about design system right now. And I don't know if you, and yeah, the first thing you need to understand about design system is that it's just a framework, a methodology that you need to learn. You need to know how to use it so you can better break free from it. So you can be able to hack the system. And I don't know if you ever struggle explaining what design systems are to your colleagues or your teams, but I find this Walt Disney video very helpful because it's a really good example showing how automation of a design can work. And what I really like actually with this example is that he also demonstrates that automating things in design is not something that new, actually, is that even back in Disney's day, the aim was already to automate as many things as possible to be as efficient as possible. And what I also like with this, this example is that it also brings an excellent answer to a recurrent question: are design systems killing creativity? And you can clearly see with both of these cartoons that there is the same skeleton behind that articulate both of these cartoons, but still you can also see that they are completely different. They have completely different characters, completely different backgrounds, context, universe. And this is why I think design systems are relevant today, because it will help setting designer free from repetitive tasks and to be more creative. And speaking of creativity, there's also another example I like to share. It is a test they did in schools, and they asked to children to complete a clock drawing in only 10 seconds. And without no big surprise, all the results were more or less the same in only 10 seconds. But then they asked them to do the exact same thing, but this time in 10 minutes. And this time, the results were way more creative and way more different. So obviously, the less time you have to do something, the less creative the result. And yeah, basically, this is why I think design systems are important. Design systems are not going to kill creativity. It's just going to help designers to be, to set designers free, because I don't think as designers, we have any value by doing the same buttons or the same icons or the same title over and over again. I think we have so much more to bring to the design industry. The other thing I really like about design systems, it's that it questions the foundation of a brand. And I was really curious to know more about the history of a brand. Let's stay in the past for a while. And there is this excellent talk by Base Design at the Kick Festival in 2019 that explain where the brand come from and where it's heading now. And I think it's important to understand the history of brands so we can better understand why design systems are relevant today. You need to go back actually in Farmers' Day, where they needed to brand their herds actually to mark their ownership. They use a hot iron technique, to brand their herds, and they started with simple iconography actually, representing their names or family. But as more farmers needed to brand their herds, the more icons there were, and it was more and more difficult to distinguish one icon from the others. This is why we started to add more shapes, more colors, more decorations, baseline, etc. And I guess we could say maybe it was a rise, of the brand logos that we know today. But over the decades, we had more and more and more logos around us, and it was more and more difficult for brands to stand out from the crowd. This is why you probably have noticed something since a few years. Brands are using something different to stand out, and it is storytelling. I'm sure you've already seen some Apple commercials or Nike advertising, and you probably noticed that they're not trying to make the logo bigger. They're not just trying to tell a story and to create some emotion with their users. And there's something else also you may have noticed when you have a look at the most prominent company's logo, that it's just that start to all look the same, you know, same font, same structure with an icon on the left, same colors. It's even more obvious if you only focus on the text of these icons. You really have the same font, the same boldness, the same serif. Brands, you know, are not trying to stand out anymore from the crowd. They are more, you know, trying to ensure their visibility on every screen, every size, every constraint. The aim is really, you know, to be the more visible possible and the more accessible possible. But once again, we come to a saturation point, and more brands are, you know, uniform and are using storytelling. And now brands need to find something else to stand out and to distinguish from the others. And this new thing, I'm sure you know it, it's the experience. Today, to defining a brand's positioning, the brand, a way for a brand to distinguish themselves is working on their experience. You can use the same codes as other. Your brand will distinguish themselves by its positive action loved by its users, and especially in line with the storytelling. You know, action speaks louder than words, and you can't just tell something anymore. You have to act. You have to do things. And I think that one of the best examples of branding using experience is Patagonia, because I think, you know, it's maybe the only brands that you know, act more on things than just saying. And I'm sure that every other brand says that they care for the planet, but there's maybe only Patagonia who really go on the streets and protest to show their concern about the planet. My point is, brands are not so much concerned about the UI anymore. They are more concerned about the experience. And today, actually, brands is much more than its UI. So yeah, it makes sense if today all our brand and all our product look all the same. And I even think that it may be a good thing, because if it might help our users to find what they need more efficiently, then why not? But still, there's still so much to do that there's still so many other things that automation cannot do. And it's all about the experience and the emotion our user will feel with our product and with our brand. And I think that it's a whole new area to play with for us. So now it's time to go in this future. And even if I don't really have a crystal ball to predict this future, I'm sure that we can guess by analyzing our context, our habits and tools, what this future look like. And I really think that the future of design system will be two different things, but very related. It will be both automated and human. It is thanks to automation that we are going to bring back some humanity into our project and into our work. And I think, you know, one of the good examples about this is how design tools are closer and closer to developers' state of mind. And one good example that you probably know if you're in the design system industry are design tokens, because I think, you know, design tokens is a really great way, a great evolution into our tools to help designers and developers to speak the same language and to better understand each other. The other thing is tools are also blending with each other. And it's not so much about speaking the same language, it's also sharing the same space. And I think, you know, this is quite striking actually with Figma interface that had completely transformed our approach to collaboration. I don't know if you remember, for those who worked for many years in the design industry, but before we had Figma and collaborative tools, you know, we had all our local files on our computer, and we only shared the final result at a specific moment in the project timeline. And to be honest, I don't think it was the best way to break silos, right? And, you know, seeing this, you know, everyone, designers, engineers, and product manager, and many more on the same file may be normal today for you, but it hasn't always been like that. And I think that allowing our tool to be more and more automated and helping us to be to better collaborate all together. I think it's a great evolution we tend to, and I think it will really help us to better collaborate. And this is why I think that the future is going to be partly more human because of this automation. On the other hand, I know that one of the benefits that we like to tell about the design system is about the cost reduction for the front-end development or the design mockups. And it's true, but it also implies that we are probably going to reduce some part of these roles in the next future on the projects. And in my opinion, UI designer may be the first concern, especially with what I just told you previously with the brands who don't want to invest so much on the UI and focus more on the experience. So I know it may sound a bit scary, but if you've been in the design industry for a while now, you know that it's part of the designer role to be in constant evolution. Whether it is with a tool, if you remember Photoshop, for example, or the constraints when we had to learn about responsive design, or even the methods when we, with Agile or with design thinking. I mean, our job has never been the same since we started, and it probably never will be. So if tomorrow we have less UI to do, it also means that we have, there's more, it leaves more room for other skills to explore, so, such as facilitation or architecture or coordination, designing emotions. I mean, there is still so much to do that automation doesn't know yet and may never know. And moreover, I wouldn't be surprised to see new emerging roles in the next few years around design system. Like, for example, an architect designer who would be in charge to articulate very complex design systems regarding their different brands or products or targets. I really think we need content writer to write a proper documentation, and it will be a dedicated full-time job, and it could be helped by a documentation designer, because no one reads the documentation, and you need to make it more visually appealing. And I'd be very curious to also see if we have some kind of a design system community managers, because a design system is really about the people, and you need to federate your people around your product, to have a strong communication about it. And finally, atomic designers, because maybe it's the way the UI designer could evolve, and I think being able to be more expert on the way you build your UI libraries, and with a component logical and atomic design logical, it could be an interesting future for designers. I also see a new change in the way we are working and with our tools because of the UI reduction. Because if we spend less time doing UI and more time doing UX, I think it will be a good opportunity to us to go back to a more natural way for us to work. And what a better way for designers than just sketching or scribbling a path or a journey and that's it. I mean, with this example, I find it very interesting that Figma is offering, the ability to draw directly on their tool on an iPad, and the dream would be maybe to be able to have a sketch and translate it directly into a coded interface. But this feature actually is already here, and you probably are aware about it, because things like Wizard or Airbnb already started with AI technology to translate a sketch into a coded interface, and it works. And this is one of my points about the future of the design system, and I really think that AI could be more and more involved into our tools. Imagine tomorrow you start a new project just by taking a picture, and the AI automatically analyzing colors, shapes, and patterns, and translate everything in design elements that you can reuse. That would be great. That would be great, right? And actually, I think it's great, but I think we can think bigger, and I think it could be even more than just one interface or one design system. It could be actually more about personalization and customization. And I think that this is interesting how material design evolved with Material U, letting more space for personalization. You still have a solid system behind your product, but you have more flexibility and customization. So now, imagine you have a solid, you have a system powered with AI, and the interface is now able to adapt to the users regarding their settings preferences, but also maybe in what location they are, or what time is it, or even maybe how they feel. And I think that creating interfaces for designers that can adapt and evolve, it's really exciting, but it's also maybe the most human thing possible for us as designers to do on these digital projects. And finally, I also think that we are sooner or later going to face the end of the design system. But don't worry, I think it will be a great thing. I think that today screens have taken over, and we need to get away from screens more and more to preserve our mental health, but also to reconnect with each other. And I'm sure that everyone here is aware about this screen addiction. And my point is, we need to start creating interfaces involving fewer screens. But I'm not saying that there won't be screens at all anymore in the near future. I'm just saying that we need to start, think about new ways of interactions involving something other than a screen. And once again, this is already happening. You all know, for example, that this new notification saying how much time we spent on our screens this week, and there are also new events, new kind of events emerging. I've attended one of these events where it was a no phone event. You have to put your phone in a bag, and it's still locked for the whole event. It was great, actually. You also have Google Home, Alexa, or Siri, who create new interactions without looking at the screen. And same with social services like Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces, who try to create some new social experiences based on our voice. And I'm sure that you already noticed how much our voice messages are increasing into our discussions. We're not just typing anymore; we are sending voice messages, and I think it's one way for us to get away from screens and maybe to take control back on our lives. And I'm also very curious to see what's going to happen with Snapchat's drone, Pixie, because I think it's an excellent answer to one of our needs, which is taking snapshots and memories with our friends, but without being the slave of this technology anymore. Finally, I think that design systems are just one of the many steps to come. And to be honest, I secretly hope that design systems are going to end sooner or later, because it would mean that we succeeded in industrializing projects and setting designers free, and many people free, from repetitive tasks. And just as we faced the birth of World Wide Web and had to learn how to build web pages, and then to upgrade these pages with Flash and make it more accessible with HTML5, and then rethink our way of building web pages for different screen sizes. I think that now we are at these new steps in the digital journey, and this step is design system. But I think there's also something after design system, and this is why I'm really convinced that sooner or later it will be so much integrated and normal to work with design systems that tomorrow design system will be a standard thing, and it won't be a thing anymore. It will be completely integrating in our workflows. So to conclude, and to go back with a croissant metaphor, the conclusion to the documentary I was telling you about is that a small group of bakers in France are trying to create a label to display on the bakeries, saying that this bakery is selling true homemade croissant. And it made me wonder, and I'm asking you the question, I don't have the answer, are at some point going to do the same thing, maybe, when we will need to create a homemade digital product that doesn't involve any design system or any automation. Would it be relevant at some point to display a logo or label anything that would say to our users, you are now experiencing a homemade digital experience? What do you think? Thank you for listening. If you want to know more, we wrote an article about this topic. It's on our ZeroHeight blog. And yeah, feel free also to join our Zero's Slack. We are very friendly. And yeah, we're also hiring if you're interested.
And most of all, I'm a design system manager at Klarna, which many of you probably know in the UK is the smooth shopping company, pretty popular, I guess. So yeah, the topic about today starts with a question. What if I told you that there was an internet dozens of years older than the internet that we actually use? It was always up to date, trustworthy news, less to known advertising, and most important, free to use. Well, actually, that internet existed and existed for more than 40 years, and it was called teletext, which, in a sentence, it was a standard for transmit data through television screens, and basically was a framework that allowed different broadcasters to create their own news and service platform. So it was a baby internet that allowed users, people watching televisions, to get news and got the content that they wanted when they wanted. So yeah, a prototype of the actual internet. We cannot see our slides. Okay, let me share again, maybe. Okay. Let me share again my Figma screen. Okay. Can you see now?
Yeah, we just fixed it.
Not yet. Okay. I don't think it's from my side though. Fantastic. Okay.
We're back.
Perfect. So yeah, we'll recap my full screen again. No, I'm joking. We already saw this ones. And let's start directly with this. So teletext, it was exactly what I'm showing you right now. A series of news and content that every broadcaster was able to transmit across their channel. Well, a quick poll for the people on YouTube and also in the audience. Of course, I want see you, but happy to answer. Have you ever used or heard about teletext? And if not, there's high chance that you either didn't spend your childhood in Europe or, well, you're born after the 2000s. In the second case, good for you. But, well, let's have a little explanation how it works, teletext. And I'm keep notice that I'm using the present because it still exists and it's still used. So basically, picture yourself watching television in the 90s, and you wanted to get some news around the topic that you are interested in. Today, we're just grabbing our phones. Well, back in the days, you're hitting the text button on your remote controls, which it's something that is still there, even in the remote controls from your modern smart TVs. And boom, immediately you were getting the teletext from the specific channel you were watching. And you will keep hearing the sounds in the background. But the most important thing, you get an index and you know, or you will read which page has the content you are interested in, and you will just input a 3-digit number on your remote control, and the teletext will load the things that you want to read. So basically, teletext offered a wide range of content and expanded the news operation from the public service broadcasters in all Europe and even outside of it. But how it started? Well, basically, it started as a side project for creating subtitles directly on the screen by a lead designer at Philips in the early 70s. The person was John Adams, which, by the way, is not the person in the photo. The person in the photo is James Redmond, that was the director of engineering at BBC, and he was the person that pushed and decided to not use teletext and the technology behind it for the subtitles and for the hearing impaired people, but for all kind of content. So CFAX was born. They put together a little team of 9 journalists, and they started to provide news in teletext, which, by the way, CFAX, so the journalists, the idea of having a service all around news, it was still there. The real technology that moves teletext, basically, it lies in the analog TV signal that some of you have familiarity with. Basically, if you ever saw those frames or those problems between when the signals wasn't perfect, that little black strip between frames, it was an interval that was capable to receive data packages from a central database. So broadcasters start to push data in that little space, but since they don't know which page the user requests, because it wasn't a server, so we can actually, create the request to the server, they needed to broadcast them all at once. But it wasn't a problem because the entire teletext, the entire little internet from BBC, the size of it was just 1 kilobyte. So super performances. And by the end of the 80s, like all the European countries had more and more teletext. Like only in UK, every channel, ITV, Channel 4, had their own teletext. Same in Spain, Italy, Netherlands, Japan. So it spread a lot around the globe. And by the 1991, millions of users see millions of pages every day. And basically, from the conceptual point of view, we are looking at the birth of the second screen, because you are looking at the screen and then you open your teletext and looking for something that you want to read. And this medium remained flexible and consistent for over 40 years. And it still works, it's still there. And since this is a design system conference, I mean, flexibility and consistency are two very important topics. So what was the design system behind teletext? And just for full disclosure, this is just a proof of concept. Teletext never had a design system or official guidelines. So I just try to extrapolate this from just from observation. And yeah, we will go through some conventions that we all recognize: patterns, components, tokens, and principles. And starting with patterns, the main two ones that we can recognize, since I already mentioned the navigation, it was all around the 3 digits. And the pattern or the convention created around those numbers was to have the first digit for topics, the second digit for chapters, and the third number for pages. So this creates some muscle memory and even conventions shared across countries around the idea of, entertainment, it's 500, and maybe TV Guide, it's 510, and maybe what movies at the cinema are 520. So people start to create some muscle memory around these ancestors of the URL. And since the navigation was around that URL, that 3-digit, so you cannot overflow to other digit, because otherwise you're just encroaching the 3-digit of another page of another content. So to overflow the text, basically teletext allowed to create those carousels on the same page. So every 30 seconds, 45 seconds, the page just rotate the extra content. And since we're talking about limited space, the components for teletext, they were just this. So the canvas, the text, and the block component. And the canvas was the limited space that I mentioned. It was basically an artboard, 40 by 24 blocks that could host either one letter or one block. And since the block could be divided into 6 pixels or sub-blocks, whatever, with all the possible combinations with colors, at the end of the day, people were able to create some pixel art on this canvas of 80 by 72 points or pixels. It works perfectly. And in combination with the simple tokens that teletext had, like colors, typography, and the possibility to make those things flashy or blinking, it was everything designer need, or actually not designers, remember, journalists. 8 colors, which were basically the palette of the analog TV signal, and only 2 font sizes. One letter could either occupy 1 block or 2 blocks in height. And that was it. If you needed bigger text, you just needed to start pixel arting and using the blocks. So a nice workaround. And the principles. So again, these are just totally made up, but overall teletext was moved around the 3 digits. That was the only way to navigate and know where to look for things. The need of let the user know when that content was updated, because then again, real-time news 24/7, it's something that it wasn't there, so never existed before. The idea that every 30 minutes I just go to the page and see the scoring of a football game, it was like pretty new. And overall, this idea of having an oxymoron, like a neutral personality. Essentially, the teletext was a news tool, so it would need to be reliable and trustworthy. But at the same time, the visual language behind it was very punk, was fun to see. So it created this little dissonance between how serious the medium wants to be and how fun is to read it. And yeah, I mean, hundreds of people around the globe were able for more than 40 years to create everything from tables of contents, Christmas cards, weather screens, even guides, puzzles, fan sites, and even, yeah, I said less to known advertising because you could see some commercial here and there, like this Depeche Mode album commercial. And then what happened? Like, yeah, I like this quote from Martin Heidegger around the fact that, especially in technology, we have no patience. And yeah, in the late 90s, Super Teletext was born, developed by in the Scandinavian countries. It allowed to have like thousands of pages, better graphic, even hyperlinks, but it was very slow. And most important, yeah, late 90s, the internet was already there. So like a villain in a horror movie, teletext keep reappearing every time that they try to kill it because it was just adapting to other mediums and other formats. For example, in the 2000s, when internet started to do numbers, teletext websites across Europe collect still dozens of millions of clicks. Like this is from the official teletext in Sweden. And even the following decades, when smartphones appears, in the app stores and in the app stores charts, teletext apps that were just mirroring the content from the TV one, they were start to appearing, and yeah, they're still used, especially in some specific age spectrums. Without even mentioning like a lot of artists that, yeah, they find the constraint very fun to use for exhibitions, like Dan Farimond and Raquel Meyers. And I think everything can be still connected to the fact that we are all still looking for a reliable and very neutral news outlet, which also essentially free, which kind of, yeah, I think it's a little discrepancy with the needs about monetization. But this need is still fulfilled somehow. Like these are not super updated numbers, but 2 million daily page views in Italy and Netherlands, 3 million weekly users in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland, 80 million monthly users in Germany, and this is in the 2018, so not so long ago. So yeah, those are still interesting numbers. But what are the lessons that we can learn from this forgotten medium? Well, first of all, your design system will champion it by tricksters, people that find workarounds, that push to the limits your design system. Well, teletext thrived with this. Like there wasn't one single page of documentation, so every workaround was adopted as a convention. Stay close to the tricksters of your organization, of your company. They will be the one that validate your design system. And then the second lesson is the core toolbox needs to be crazy simple. 8 colors, 2 font sizes, 1 layout, 1 block. I mean, teletext worked perfectly fine for over 40 years only for this. So if you're trying to reduce the complexity of your basic library, think again. You can synthesize even more, but please don't call it foundation. And yeah, I'm saying something very obvious here. Performances and accessibility are long shots that always pay off, but we all know that. So yeah, I'm not that smart to say this again and again. And here are some my sources and also my social handles. Yeah, feel free to reach out if you also want to see some nice pictures of my cats. And yeah, I think that's it. So thank you, Taxamike, and Retasai.
Hey everyone, let me turn off the video. So my name is Andrey, and I'm that lucky guy who got COVID right today, just at the day. Can you imagine? Anyways, I'm Andrey, and I'm product design lead here at Beamery. And for the past year and a half, I've been working on Team Core frontend to help drive the design system. And this talk will be about how we managed to deliver the design system despite all the whirlwinds that has been happening around, and how we managed to stay effective at pace. But before I begin, I want to start with a little personal story. Around 2016 or so, when I just began working on design systems, was really inspired by industry leaders like Shopify or Atlassian, who have already published their systems. And they published a lot of great articles with stories about how they developed their systems, real success stories. Was really inspired by all of that. And a lot of water has passed under the bridge since then. I had led the design systems at Intercom and VK.com, supported many more as external consultant. I also launched my online course on design systems. And yet, every day of my experience was drastically different to those articles with success stories. Most of the time, I was fighting for resource. And as a result, I had to wear a lot of hats simultaneously and juggle multiple roles. I had to fight for engagement. And overall, I had to move much faster than I would want to. Regardless, I was really inspired by the idea that I would want to build the world-class design system that would sit aside the likes of Shopify. And with that, I embarked on one of the design system projects. It was several years ago. We, as a team, were very devoted to do everything by the book. And usually when you start working on a system from scratch, when there was no system before, you want to be a little bit more on a strict side because you need to build a certain culture first. And therefore, we decided that we would want to really centralize the ownership of the system, own and track every pattern across, and also be very strict about deviations because we want to incentivize consistency. But with time, we found out that things aren't going as expected. Instead of speeding everyone up, our design system does sort of the opposite. And with time, this makes designers and engineers more and more reluctant to use it. When we tried to analyze what had happened, we understood that in our ambition to build this world-class design systems, we didn't take into account the unique circumstances of that particular company and tangibly its size, pace, and culture. In terms of size, it was growing scale up with more than 600 people. And that means that overall pace of development was very fast. And as a result, instead of encouraging consistency, they were encouraging experimentation. And in this reality, our strict system was only creating roadblocks for everyone. And back then, I thought that it's the company's mentality that has to change. They need to embrace this culture of consistency. But in fact, it's my mentality that had to change. I should have taken into account and empathized with the existing ways of working in that company. This would have made the overall development of the system much more effective. Now we fast forward to 2021 when we started working on the Beamery's design system. And usually when you start working on design system, things are not necessarily in a perfect order. This happens with every single company. So you would probably have some legacy that limits product development. You would have design and tech debt that limits and slows down designers and engineers. You would also have painful experience for designers and engineers. And we had all that, just like every other company. But at the same time, we had a few of the challenges of our own. In particular, we didn't have any foundations to rely on when we just began. So we had to take a step back and develop the overall visual language for our system even before we can start working on it. We also were under the time pressure, as it usually happens in B2B enterprise sector. So we had no luxury of investing a lot of time into that. Also, as a team, we experienced some turnover, which obviously slowed us down. So when I look at all that constraints, in hindsight, I realized that they were also kind of a blessing. As a few of the previous speakers mentioned, when you're really constrained, sometimes it could really inspire you and make you more creative. And this is what happened with us. It forced us to be more pragmatic in our approach and really think hard where and how we would invest our time and efforts in order to maximize the impact. It also meant that we would most likely deviate from some golden standards or do things even completely differently. So this is a story of giving up some mental models and acquiring new ones. When you begin redesigning your products with design systems, there are several potential options. It could be a big bang redesign, which frankly a lot of companies try to avoid, or it could be a redesign product by product, or even page by page. But regardless of these approaches, it usually implies that you have to sit as a team, if there is a design system team or a number of individuals, and chip away components one by one until you finally get to this like 1.0 release. And all that time, and this is what I've been doing myself, by the way, in previous companies, but all that means that all the time before this 1.0 release, your team would be a complete black box for everyone else. Your company wouldn't get any value from your work until then. And this is something that we cannot afford. So in order to avoid that situation, we decided that instead of just sitting and building the design system in complete isolation, we will develop in the context of a real product launch. What this means is that this will allow us to first implement it straight away, to have like a forcing function from time, and also validate our system immediately. So we needed to choose the appropriate project to start with. And we evaluated potential options through different lenses. First, it's urgency. Since it's the first implementation, we didn't want to rush it way too much, but still it has to be timely. It has to have impact. So by the end, ideally, we would develop enough components to cover a lot of use cases and overall have a multiplicative effect all across the company. We need to think carefully about the product in terms of its scope, in terms of how much it could affect other products around it, because when you're redesigning one product, it could have like a domino effect. Therefore, we didn't want to break any metric. So the product itself must be really encapsulated in a way, but still usable. And effort. Obviously, we don't want to overwhelm ourselves at the very beginning. And when we evaluated number of projects based on these criteria, we chose pools list. It was very timely, and it allowed us to build all the necessary components, including the table, which is a thing of its own. It's really huge, but at the same time, the majority of Beamery is various kinds of tables. So this will give us a really great impact all across the company. So this is great. But first, you need to develop the foundational building blocks. And this is when I had to break another mental model. If you wake up designer in the middle of the night, they will likely be able to explain Double Diamond to you. So you're going through certain discovery phases before you actually begin developing something. And this is what we do at Beamery all the time, but not this time. We knew from the scope of the pools list which components we need to build. We also had rough designs for them because we spent some time developing the overall visual language. What we didn't have is proper research for all these components, so we only had designs. And in a standard situation, a typical situation which I've been before in, engineers will just sit and wait for you to conduct all the necessary research and hand over the necessary data to them, the specs. But again, this is something that we cannot afford. We cannot afford blocking ourselves. And we decided to do things in parallel. So I will conduct the due diligence of discovery and rationalization, whilst engineers will lay out all the technical scaffolding, and they will even build the components before I deliver the specs to them. In order to do that, we utilize the concept of headless components. In particular, we used React Spectrum libraries. What that is that gives you all the technical foundations for your components, including state management, accessibility, everything that you need to begin. And then you can put a layer of UI on top of that. So this is great. This is not limiting us anymore. So this approach allowed us to avoid waterfall and make quick progress as a result, and overall have really strong components. But at the same time, such a lean and a little bit backwards approach meant that there will be another part of the design system that we'll do completely differently. And I'm talking about documentation. If you look at this definition of the design system by Nathan Curtis, documentation is essentially like an intrinsic part that makes the design system what it is. And if you think about design system documentation, you can imagine this website from Shopify or Atlassian, these industry leaders. They have custom websites for their documentation. And in fact, I've been approaching this so far myself. For example, this is documentation website that we built for Intercom. And this means that such approach means that for every component, you will not only create just a custom web page, but create long form documentation with lots of examples, do's and don'ts and whatnot. But now, and we would like to do that, to be honest. But now I'm putting my pragmatic hat on and asking, in order to unblock engineers and designers, do I really need a custom website? Or it could be something simpler. Do I really need a documentation page with lots of examples for every single component? When we start thinking about that, we realized that we might think of a documentation not as a one-off thing where you have nothing and then you have to build all of this scope, but you can think of it as a process where layer by layer, you will deliver the right amount of documentation that you need right now, eventually get into a place where you have this shiny custom website, but starting with some MVP solution that will allow your consumers to essentially use the system. Another principle that we utilized was predictability. We used that for technical documentation. This means that we craft the API of our components in such a way that it would meet the mental model of our consumers. It will do exactly what they expect from it. This is where we had to rely on industry standards, by the way. And this also means that we'll try to ingrain the documentation and in their existing workflows. So essentially, documentation will meet them where they already are. And in particular, for example, we utilize these code hints. So you would, an engineer, while writing the code, they would get contextual suggestions and pieces of documentation, and you don't need to write the whole page for it. And lastly, for design documentation, we heavily utilize third-party tools. When I just began working on design systems several years ago, there was no a lot of choice. If you want to write documentation, you need to either build a custom website or you will use something much more generic like Confluence, for example. Now there is plenty of choice and you have a lot of opportunity to speed up your process. In particular, we used zeroheight. I really love this product. This is not an advertisement, but yeah, I really love it because this allowed us to implement everything that we need for design documentation at this point in time with very little effort. We also used Loom for to creating some of the guidelines. So instead of writing long form pages for some of the guides that we needed, we created this short, engaging videos that are really easy to make and then to maintain if necessary. But this is just another form that allows us to move much faster. So I walked you through how the steps that we took in order to stay effective at pace. But was it all worthwhile? And if we would evaluate the results tangibly, in a reasonably low span of time, we were able to unblock 2 teams to implement the system in their products. We also delivered a critical mass of components that would allow us to cover a lot of use cases, enable future implementations. And as a result of it, the 3rd team has just used the design system, even without our active support, which also kind of validates the approach for documentation. Overall, 3 of the 5 front-end teams have already consumed the system, and I think this is a great validation of the whole approach. This is great proof of concept for the system. And we overall laid all the foundations for now that we can settle a little bit, slow down our approach, and get ready for what will be the next chapter for Beamery's design system. Lastly, I just wanted to share a few learnings. When you look at various documentation, various design systems, you may think that all of them are like roughly the same. At the same time, they're drastically different. And what makes them different is the fact that every company is different. And therefore, when you're developing the design system for your company, instead of optimizing for some golden standards and best practices, make sure that you also optimize for the unique circumstances of that particular company. Start small and move incrementally. This has been the essence of our approach. And this doesn't mean that we will cut the corners and ship some scrappy stuff. We would never sacrifice the quality. We can only sacrifice the scope. And in order to achieve that, we always start with thinking big. We'll create a vision for where we want to be. Next, we would develop a strategy, like a path towards that vision. And then we will take the first step that will allow us to have impact. Thank you very much for watching. It was really great to finally be able to do that here. Cheers.
All right. So to begin, my name is Jenny Mullins. I'm the founder and CEO of Pixelfat Design, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the navigating the politics of design systems. But before I get too deep into that, I want to give you a little bit of my own personal background navigating design system politics myself. So at Pixelfat, we work with different clients, both large and small, to develop and help companies maintain design systems. And so we have the advantage of getting with a bunch of different folks and figure out how they approach design systems. And one thing we've realized from all this experience is that no matter what company we were working with, no matter the size, we always ran into this person. And so what you're looking at here, this beautiful artistic drawing, is a person at the top. Their hair is on fire. And at the bottom of the hill is a cool pond of water. And so ideally what this person should really be doing is running down that hill and dunking their head in the water. But they're not doing that. They're putting up a brick wall between themselves and the water. And so this is just an illustration of what it can be like sometimes to create a design system. You're working with people, you're trying to create tools that are going to make their lives easier, and they push back, and it's hard to understand why. And we got to a point where we ran into a person like this just about every project, and we kind of had this idea like, okay, well, this is just part of design systems. You're just going to run into somebody that that's going to push back, and that's part of it. But the reality is the problem wasn't so much this person with their hair on fire. The problem was us and our approach. So it's taken us a long time and a good amount of experience to really understand that design systems aren't about tools. They're about organizational change. At the core of it, you're asking people to change the way they do things. And if you want to change the way people do things, you're most likely going to have to navigate politics. So if you are like me and you hear the word politics, you probably have this sort of internal shudder, this sort of thought of like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. But I don't truly believe politics has to have such a negative connotation. I believe we can think about politics not so much as something where we're having to manipulate or browbeat people into a particular direction, but rather as a way to empathize with our team and try to really understand where they're coming from. So my hope is that at the end of this talk, you will be able to walk away with greater ability to identify users, stakeholders, champions, and detractors, as well as some concrete tools to help you understand and align your team so you can bring that back to your organization and get that design system built. So in order to accomplish that, we're going to cover 3 topics. The first one is understanding your political landscape. The second is creating a common vision. And the third is keeping the momentum going. So let's start with understanding your political landscape. So as I'm sure everybody here knows, building a design system is basically like building any other product. It doesn't matter that you're building it for an internal team versus an external consumer, it's the same. So you're going to have consumers and you're going to have investors, and both of those groups are going to really require different things. So another way to say consumer and investor is users and stakeholders, and that's anybody that needs to convince somebody else to expense resources to create and maintain a design system. And so this is a piece that can get forgotten, is that design systems require support, whether that's financial or people or time or whatever. Anyways, these people, they tend to be leadership. So you're looking at like CEOs, heads of designs, the VP of design of design or engineering, or even engineering managers or design managers. Or it could be all of the above. And the thing about users and stakeholders is that they, like most and all people, are often driven by their fears and desires. So we all have fears and desires, and those will drive our actions a lot of times. So in order to really understand your users and stakeholders, you're going to need to get to the bottom of, hey, what drives them in terms of fears and desires? So you're going to run into some common scenarios, most likely. It's different everywhere. Every company is a bit of a snowflake. People are complex, but we've seen some common themes over the years that I can share here. So users, common user fears that we would run into. Designers, when you talk about design systems, you might run into fear of losing creative control, or fear of bureaucracy. And for engineers, I'll often see fear of another redesign. Is this design system going to come with a massive redesign that's going to be poorly thought through, would be very expensive for engineers? Or fear of more bad handoffs. If there's been bad handoffs in the past, which there probably are, if you're looking to invest in a design system, like there's a concern that there might be more of the same. However, desires tend to be fairly well aligned. So, between designers and engineers, we would often hear things like, you desire a cohesive product. You desire freedom from building or designing that button again. Nobody wants to do it. Desire a more seamless handoff between designers and engineers. We really want that to be much easier to use. Stakeholders, on the other hand, are a completely different ball of wax. These are different types of people. They have different responsibilities, so their fears are going to be different. They're going to be afraid that a design system will never be done, right? I mean, you've probably heard that at some point. They're going to fear justifying the cost of a design system to their boss because they are expensive. They're going to fear that the design system isn't actually helping. Like, is it, if the goal is that a design system would speed things up and at some point it looks like it's slowing things down, that can be a real concern. Desires, on the other hand, are more straightforward and they're easier to understand. They, like users, desire efficiency. They desire a faster time to market. They desire a cohesive product. The best way to learn people's fears and desires is by talking to them, and interviewing them and giving them different tools, basically user testing. So we use user testing to get to know our customers. We can use user testing to get to know our team. It's a really fantastic tool. So what are some specific ways that we can begin to use user testing within these different groups? So for users, I like to use a survey. It's a really sort of simple, low-cost way to cast a wide net. Google Forms, fine, but whatever floats your boat. And you basically want to include at least one person from each platform or each product area. So you're trying to like make sure you're being very inclusive. And it doesn't take very much time to get something like this out. And I usually write a separate one for designers as well as for engineers. And that's just because it'll be a little bit more attuned to either group. Of course, with all user testing, you want to avoid leading questions. And then once you start to get these responses back, you're going to notice some louder voices. Either they're going to be positive champions or they're going to be more negative detractors, or just people that are like really hurting in their day-to-day and just like upset about the frictions that they're having to deal with. Those are the people that you're going to want to follow up with in one-on-ones, whether you're grabbing coffee with them or you're doing it in a more structured way where it's recorded. Make sure that you do make the time to meet those people one-on-one though. Stakeholders are a little bit of a different breed. It's going to be a smaller group. You're probably not going to cast as wide a net. The first thing you want to do is identify your stakeholders. It's not always obvious who the stakeholders are. I'm sure we've all had the experience of working on a project and then halfway through, somebody comes in that has really strong opinions and you're like, man, why didn't I, involve that person a little bit earlier? So you want to do your best to get anybody that could be a stakeholder brought on early. And what I like to do is to get them in a room and perform what I call a post-mortem, which is basically where you ask somebody to like pretend they're looking back on this project once it's already completed and describe what it would look like if it had failed. And then you describe what it would look like if it had been successful. And then based off of that, you're going to get a really clear picture of what the fears and desires are of this group. And it's going to be different for different people. And as you're doing this, you want to channel your inner therapist. You want to make a lot of space for people to talk about things that they're worried about or they're excited about. Don't feel the need to convince them that they shouldn't be worried about something or that, oh yeah, you want that? We're definitely going to do it. Like just try to listen and be there and make that space. Once you've gotten a clear picture of the fears and desires of your team, and you've essentially established the political landscape, like what you're working with, that is the time to start to use that information to create a common vision. So that's going to be the fuel that's going to, or the foundation that's going to feed the rest of your efforts. One of the tools I really like to use to create a common vision is a North Star presentation. So I know a North Star presentation could mean a lot of different things in a lot of different contexts. But in this case, what I'm talking about is any kind of presentation that's going to align your users and your stakeholders, and it's going to conceptualize what it is you're creating. So sometimes with design systems, like we work in design systems, it's very clear what a design system is and what's going to be involved, but it isn't necessarily clear for someone that's not doing that on a day-to-day basis. So try to find a way to really make it tangible. Sometimes just naming the design system or naming the project can be really helpful. And you ultimately want to deliver a vision that everyone can get excited about. So that's going to be different from, depending on where you're at. So if you are doing more of like a big bang redesign, then you might want to show, hey, this is what the redesigned product is going to look like once we roll this out. Or if you're focusing more on sort of infrastructure and less on UI, you might say, hey, here's what an ideal process will look like. So you're just basically creating a vision to shoot for. This is also a good time to go ahead and level set expectations. Just try to like gently let people know what is a reasonable expectation and what maybe isn't. So some examples of that are like, how will designers build? Will there be a shared library? Yes. Will there be freedom from having to design a button for the umpteenth time? Yeah. Will it make shipping faster? Eventually, yeah. Will everyone be singing Kumbaya around a campfire? Probably not. So just being really clear up front with what people should expect. Okay. You've established your foundation. You understand the fears and goals or desires of your teammates. You've created a vision that's gotten everyone excited. now and only now you are ready to actually create the design system, which I know sounds crazy, but that foundational work is really important to pave the way for you to actually then do the work. And as you're doing this, you're going to realize that design systems are expensive. That's just the reality. They're expensive. They take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to really roll out to a project or to a product. They require a lot of resources, whether that's money or people, and they require people to change their behavior, which we all know it's like a very difficult thing to accomplish. So in order to sort of keep that support for your design system over time, you're going to have to keep the momentum between your users and your stakeholders. And we've kind of found that meeting with either group or both groups rather, a minimum of about once a month is a pretty nice place to be. It might be more, it might be less. It kind of just depends on what the landscape is at your own organization. But the truth is, this is ultimately going to mean that you're not just building a design system, you're promoting it at the same time. So what are some tools that you can use to promote the design system as you're building it? And again, it's going to be different between users and stakeholders. So for users, one of the best things that you can do is to just be inclusive, to make your team really feel involved. Some simple tools to do that are just a Slack channel, just giving people space to ask questions and make requests and pull feedback. This is also a great place for you to be able to ask them feedback on things. Or brown bags. So as you're rolling stuff out, things are going to change. Maybe there'll be new documentation, whatever. It's a good habit to get into where you can share that out in a regular way with your team. This is also a great place to get feedback, especially if it's negative. You really want to make that space for people to be able to give that those requests and collective feedback. All right, stakeholders. Stakeholders are, you almost want to spend more attention on stakeholders than users, but I actually don't know if that's true. I think it's probably equal, but they're very different. So stakeholders, they've got a different set of responsibilities. They are the ones that are basically sort of putting their credibility and their budget on the line to support a design system. And at some point, this will happen. They're going to look at the design system project and say, I don't see any progress. I don't see what's happening. And this is really expensive. Was this a mistake? And they're going to be worried because they are going to have to go to their boss and explain what's happening. So one thing that you can always do to keep momentum on your project is to make sure you always give stakeholders something that they can take to their bosses, right? So what are stakeholders going to care about? They're not going to be interested in the same sort of things users are. They're not going to want to be in the weeds. They're really going to want to get high level progress. And although this could be it can and is an entire talk in and of itself, things that you might do to establish that progress is basically create key KPIs and then track them over time. So some examples of things that you might that a stakeholder might be interested in is, like, say, an adoption stat. So you can see this in Figma Design System Analytics for one. Team engagement stats, you can track this in Slack. Team satisfaction stats, you can roll out an NPS in a survey, or demos, just something really quick and easy to just demonstrate, hey, look how much easier it is for designers to design with this new way versus the old way. And as you're thinking about users, as you're thinking about stakeholders, as you're trying to create momentum and adoption, you always want to strategize for small wins early and often. And this is where that work to figure out what people are interested in, what their desires are, will really pay off. Because you can find out what their friction points are, like what's really bugging them on a day-to-day basis. And from that, you can identify things that are cheap and easy to fix. And you're going to want to optimize those in your roadmap so that you can start to build enthusiasm and ultimately adoption among your team early on. So this concludes the end of the presentation. to kind of wrap it all up, I want to leave you with one simple idea, and this could ideally save you 20 minutes, but it's too late. You've already gone on this ride with me. The core of it is, if you really want to create a great design system, if you want to create organizational change, and you need to navigate politics, the best thing you can do is to just make that effort to empathize with and understand your teammates. That is the key. Don't get frustrated when someone has a different perspective from you. Don't get frustrated when someone puts the brakes on something. Try to stop and really just understand where they're coming from, and then that will serve you well. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and I'll be around Q&A if anyone has any questions.
There we go, I'm back in the room. In your talk, you were basically talking about the future of design systems, and you mentioned something which I thought was quite interesting. Maybe we don't need them in the future, because that means that designers has won. Did I get that right, or did I misunderstood you? Can we elaborate a little bit on that? I think it sounds, because now everyone all of a sudden is like, hang on a second, we're not going to need design systems. What about my job?
It's not so much that we won't need a design system anymore. It's just that it will be so much, a standard thing and integrated in our ways of working and into our tools, that it will be, the new normal to work with design system. Just as I think that today, we don't, it's not a thing if we have to do a digital project in a responsive way, because it's normal to do a website for every screen size. And yeah, I suppose that in the next few years, it will be the same for design system. It will be the same, working in a company with a design system, or working for a brand or on a project that has a design system. It will be just, the standard thing, yeah.
So less reliant on them, but my job is still safe, yeah? Okay, thank you. That's ultimately what I wanted to check. Brilliant. And will all digital products look the same then in this new design system world, or what's going to happen?
I'm sorry?
Sorry, so in this new, will all digital projects in the future, in this world of post-design system, are they all going to look the same then, if we necessarily don't need them anymore? Or what will happen with creativity?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if everything tend to look all the same, but I don't think it's a bad thing, because to me, user experience is maybe the more important things, but if it might help our users to find what they need more efficiently, so yeah, of course, why not? But I think creativity could be in other places too, and maybe also you can see design systems and how they, standardize or automate things, like I don't know, like the car industry. I mean, everyone knows how to drive a car, no matter what. It means they don't need to drive a specific car because it's the only one they know how to drive. But you can have some, specificities and specificities to the car with still, a solid system behind it. So. Yeah, but the short answer is yeah. It probably will all look the same, but it's for the best, yeah.
Well, I guess as well in the future we'll also have new areas that we don't necessarily like, different types of world, metaverse, different types of design systems from today, which is not just sort of on flat screen digital. That's probably going to make us still going to need to develop design system in a slightly different direction. Or am I not making any sense? So in the future, we're going to have different, what's the word I'm looking for? Right now, we're looking at screens. We got 2D, and we got design systems, and we're building pages, we're building apps, etc. But in the future, there's going to be a different scenario where we kind of design system for the metaverse. In our last conversation, we had somebody talking about what that's going to look like, how it's going to look like when we sort of looking at design systems for headset, immersive experiences, etc. So that part of the design system still has to develop, and we kind of, I'm assuming that we're not anywhere ready to let go of that yet.
yeah, and I think the answer is not so much about design systems. Maybe it's more about the designs in general. How are we going to design for metaverse? How are we going to design for new experiences? And you know, when I was, talking about how screens surrounded us and how we are trying to create new experiences to create interactions with voice or anything. It's also, a new territory for brands to explore. So I'm sure there is a new territory for brands to explore in the metaverse. But there are also, for example, the sound identity. I think that could be interesting. I'm sure that all of you know already some very famous sound identities that you can associate to a specific brand, such as a Slack notification or a Google Calendar reminder, or maybe even when you match on Tinder, it has specific sound that you can relate to a specific brand. And I think it's all new possibilities for brands and for us as designers to explore, and it's not just about the UI anymore.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to give you a little break there. Thank you. So now we are going to venture in to see. I have a question for one of our remote panelists, and I think this question is probably. So this is about building a design system whilst flying. So I know that there is a little bit of a sound issue on the Zoom. I hope that the live stream sound is okay. So the question is, building a design system whilst flying, I assume this is due to the business need and priorities. Did you get a point where you could define your own priorities? Now let's see if we can get some sound on that one.
Can you repeat the last part of your question?
Hear you. Hang on 1 second, Andrey.
No, you don't hear me.
Try now.
Try now. Try it again. No. Should I talk?
Yes. Try now.
Yes. Can I ask you to repeat the last part of your question?
Sure. Can you still hear me? Oh, you can. Oh my God, what is going on? This is brilliant. So the question was, building a design system whilst flying. I assume this is due to the business need and priorities. Did you get to a point where you could define your own priorities?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. And this is, I would guess this is exactly the next chapter for our system that I was mentioning. Because as we laid all the necessary foundations, we are in the position to start thinking longer term. So now, again, keeping that sort of pragmatic hat in mind, we will think about the next steps. In particular, we would want to start owning certain areas of UI. So, for example, navigation or notification system. They're not just components, they're like little products, especially navigation. So this would be one area. Another area is getting to a point as soon as possible where our team would never become a roadblock for anyone. So we would invest into contribution guidelines and consumption guidelines so that everyone can freely implement the system at their products. We had already validation for that, but we want to make sure that it works as smooth as possible. So the next step here is to get, in order to set your, the first step is make sure that you survive, that you set all the necessary foundations in order for the system to survive. The next step is thinking, how can your system evolve with your company? And this is where optimizing for the objective and the strategy of your company comes into play. So yes, we did approach that in such a lean way before because we needed to move fast. And the company will keep moving fast. Eventually, they will grow, they will develop new products, and we need to keep up with that. This is where a new chapter comes in.
Excellent, thank you. I'm just too scared to talk. Excellent, thank you. Good answer. So I'm gonna move on to a different question. I guess this one's probably for Jenny. You were giving us a good run through of setting up the design system. I think we've all been at that, buy-in, getting people on board, getting the organization to understand the cost and what is actually they're taking on. Surprisingly, how many organizations don't understand that, and they've been going for a few months. So what happens when you encounter a detractor? Like, how do you get them on board when the buy-in might not be across the board?
Hey, so I think your question is, what do you do when you find a detractor blocking your way forward?
Correct.
Yeah, you take them out to lunch. you go get coffee with that person. There's this expression, you keep your friends closer and you keep your enemies closer, or yeah, sorry, I bungled that, but you get my point. Keep your champions close and keep your detractors closer. So if somebody is blocking you and you don't understand why, your first job is to find out why and to try to have an open mind about it, and you know, not sort of succumb to frustration, but really to try to understand where they're coming from. And once you do that, you'll have the tools to hopefully convince them otherwise, or change what you're doing so you can find a compromise.
There we go. Are we okay? Yes. So I think, yeah. So as soon as the guys on the Zoom call have stopped talking, we just need some silence there. It's all good. We're back. Just as a quick follow-up on that one. So I have a question here, which is the biggest user problem that you encounter when designing design system, and how did you solve it? I think you partially talked about how do you solve the problem, but it'd be interesting to hear what has been your biggest problem that you have come across.
So the question is, what are like the big that we've come across, or like maybe what are the things that people do to block progress? It could, you know, like it could be anything. I'm sure everyone in this room can attest to that.
This is not where this is coming from. This goes so well. Okay. No, this is not. No, the sound of this is. Try again.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Is this okay? Great. So yeah, what can people do to block your progress? Could be anything, honestly. Common things I run into are not getting, say, the engineering resources we need to actually build the components that we're designing, or having a hard time like actually going through and making systemic changes throughout the product. Sometimes I've run into like design leadership that wasn't like either didn't understand what a design system was or weren't excited about it, and so then they didn't use it, and so then the team didn't use it. Sometimes the team just doesn't adopt it because they don't understand what it is, or you're not doing a very good job like communicating and understanding their needs. There really could be anything. I think the hardest thing to figure out is when somebody is blocking and you don't know why, or even that they are. Like you might just kind of be like, why isn't this happening? And just not have a clear idea. So that's when you got to do a little bit more digging. You really got to put that user testing hat on and try to get to the bottom of things.
Okay. Okay. It's okay now? Yeah? Okay. Thank you everyone for your patience. Thank you, Jenny, for that answer. So I have a question here, which I think is really interesting. You know how there's always a discussion between designers and developers. Should developer design something? That's my question. Should designers code? That's everyone else's question. So I've got a really interesting question here. With developers, and I guess this is basically for all of you, anyone who kind of feels attached to this, with developers being able to build at an organics level of code, not just by line, more complex resources available, etc. Where do designers show real value, if any? That's a really loaded question. Jesus. Anybody feels like, oh, that's a question I want to take on? Nobody wants to take on that question.
I guess I can take it.
Francesco. Francesco.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, fantastic. I guess, yeah, this is a very, yeah, of course, super large question. In the end, especially where we are so passionate, and I can just also report some very real world examples from our company with the most important value that we can bring, the famous seat at the table. It's coming from the educational part of design, like trying to not only towards was below us as reports if you are a manager, or besides you with your peers, but also above you. So trying to explain and bring this institutional knowledge in the company, and everything comes down to solving problems. So I mean, the old question around designers should code, or developers should have that some kind of UI skills or visual skills, whatever. In the end is converge towards one single question: do we solve the right problem? And when it comes to design system especially, do we solving this in the most effective way from product engineering and design point of view, without reinventing the wheel and trying to stay consistent with the company, with the company direction and the business needs. So yeah, I mean, we try to summarize this with the educational parts, like especially I think we are experiencing also like a great golden age of not be perceived anymore as the crafters, the people that push the pixels. It was like this kind of balance for a period. UX designers they were like the superstars, and then the UI interaction designers were the superstars. Now we are reaching a good plateau, like everybody matters, and the knowledge is just there. The only thing is how we can just solve the right problems for the organization. So that's the I hope this was at least my the subjective answer. Yeah, please, Andrey.
When I hear this talk about who should code and who should design, it makes me think that it's not the right question. We are in a position where in order to, we have to have multiple functions that work together in order to translate some product thinking into the UI that your customers will interact with. And it is weird if in order to achieve that, we need some people need to do the things that they're least experienced in. But the question is not about that. The question is like, okay, how can we get to this point where we translated the product thinking, and how you said we are solving the problem as fast as possible with less tools as possible. So I personally hope that we'll get into sort of no UI world as soon as possible, where it would not be a blocker anymore. You don't need people with different mindsets and different skills in order to translate something from one language into another.
Sorry, I'm just automatic, given us a little bit of delay. Both excellent answers, and I really agree with you. I think it's fantastic if we can stop ask that question. I'm going to remind myself to also not ask the question in that way. And I think you're right. Maybe in a long distance future, we won't have designers and engineers. We will have just creators who are capable of solving problems. That's something to aspire to. Jules, this is another one for you. Going back to my random questions earlier, someone has actually managed to sort of put it in a better way. So this, you probably appreciate this. If we move away from visual to audio and other sensors, with the growth of intelligent UI, etc., how do we create unique experiences? and kind of show value in that. Is that, have you thought of the different sort of, is this something on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, should I use it?
Let's try it.
Let's try it. I guess, you know, customization could be, you know, one of the ways to be able to have unique experiences. It's not so much about having custom colors or custom buttons. It's more about having a real custom, custom experience. And I guess having unique experiences implies to be able to better know your users and to address them the right interfaces, the right experiences, and how you want your users to interact with your brand or your product the best way, and maybe in the best way possible for your users regarding in which context they are. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. I don't know if anybody else actually wants to try to respond to that. Is how do we create unique experiences with new sort of the growth of super intelligent UI? Everyone's terrified.
Not to be honest, because as soon as we begin to like embarking into this new world where it would be either, I don't know, metaverse or audio interfaces or something like that, we'll automatically starting to think slightly differently. So some people start doing that ahead of the rest, like the visionaries. But it's hard to say before we are starting to experience this new world, to be honest. And I think don't want to criticize metaverse for sure, but I think this is something that has been experienced pretty recently, where some concepts might have been like slightly even ahead of our like mindsets, of where our mindsets are at the moment, and therefore it's really hard to push them forward right now.
Sorry. Okay, that's fantastic. I'm going to move over to another question. I actually wanted to talk a little bit about teletext, and this is me showing my age. I do love a good teletext. And I'm from Sweden, where Francesco is currently living, so I'm sure you are aware that teletext is very popular in Sweden as well, or at least used to be. If I remember correctly, 199 still means that you get subtitles, so very useful stuff. If you were approached by teletext today, and basically they said to you, do you know what? We don't accept the fact that we're gone. We think we're coming back. How would you approach teletext? That is the big question.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, trying to doing the a good equation with like modern standards, let's say, looking at, for example, MP3s. Oops. Yeah. Like the MP3 standards or other kind of things that thrived just because they worked. So I think that the easy answer in the end is it's something that it was probably just born with simplicity in mind, simplicity due to the constraints of the time. So now probably we are facing the exact opposites when it comes to technology. Like probably we don't have constraints, or we just try to bypass without trying to understand if those constraints are just enough to build what we want to build, or try to reach what we want to reach. And I can just do the, and probably I'm diverging from the from the question, but essentially, we're talking about metaverse, or maybe we can just put another fancy word, buzzword here, which is the blockchain. it's a great technology and a great standard, probably can allow it like great things, but in the end, people still don't understand what it is. Like even like probably like people well informatized that works in the digital industry are having a hard time to really understand what it is. And every day we're just watching people that try to push the boundaries of the blockchain technology and trying to find multiple uses without probably, and Web3 is a lot like all those kind of fancy stuff without defining we should use it, or like do we really need it? So yeah, I mean, in the end, and trying to answering the first part of the question, teletext today would just like another standard. If we look at the actual products, so the other part of the, not the standard, but the outcome, it would just something very easy to use, like like WhatsApp or like any other platform that thrived just because of its simplicity. The 50 seconds of probably we can just look at the other perceptual patterns, like the 50 seconds of TikTok or the simplicity of sending an audio message. Those patterns and those mental models are very sellable to the critic mass of the audience. And yeah, the very unlikely take on teletext in the end is just because it cannot get away from the fact that it's free and the fact that it's managed from a pool of journalists. So it's something that how could you pay for this outside from and something that I put outside from the presentation is that in the countries without public services, teletext didn't thrive, because especially in the US, people don't know what it is, because they have kind of a public service television, but it's not the main television channel. So teletext cannot be monetized, and it fails when it can be monetized. I mean, this is the trying to compare with what we have today and with the capitalist world that we live in, probably.
Thank you for entertaining my question. Basically, thank you for entertaining my question. Basically, if we want teletext to succeed in the modern world, we need to find a way to monetize it. It's a good answer for it. Thank you. Okay, so I've got one slightly longer question and then one short question, and I think, unfortunately, at that point, we're going to have to call it. This one is, when working, I guess this is kind of for you, Jenny, but I'm also interested to hear if anybody else has had the same sort of, when working out user needs, do you sort of take customer research or customer feedback on board for the final digital product, or do you sort of rely on users of the design system itself? So I guess it's kind of two types of users. Which user there formulate the needs when you move forward?
Sorry, I'm not sure I totally got that question.
That's okay. It was probably very terribly read, so I try again. When you look at, when working out user needs, ultimately there are two types of users for a design system. It's the people that are using the design system directly, and then it's the end user who's going to use whatever the design system provides in the end. Which of those two user groups, from your perspective, is kind of the important one when you're working out how to move forward?
It's a bit garbled, but what I think I understand is that you're asking me which users do you pay more attention to, the internal users of your company or your external users like the customers? Okay, great. I think the answer to that depends on what you're doing, right? If you're redesigning the product along with creating a design system, then you're definitely going to want to involve your external customers because it's going to affect them. If you're working on something that's purely internal that a customer is probably not even going to even see, then you probably don't need to reach out to them. So it really kind of just depends on what you're setting out to achieve.
Excellent. Thank you. I think we take that as an answer because I think we can all agree on that. That's probably a good approach. This last question here is one for everybody. And essentially, we had a little chat back here while they were talking, and it got me thinking of disastrous design systems. So I'm going to hold your thoughts on that one because I might come back because I think that could be super interesting. But this question is a little bit around that. What's the biggest challenge you ever had to getting people to adopt your design system, and how did you resolve it? Let's start with you. You're right here next to me. What was the biggest challenge you ever had when trying to get people to sort of getting on board and adopt the design system? Have you ever come across any huge issues?
I don't know if it will be, the perfect answer, but I feel like sometimes we kind of underestimate the power of the name of design system. I think that the design system is a terrible name for design system because it implies design, and most of the people think that it's only for designer or it's only a design thing, and so it's hard, to federate more people and designers around your design system. And one way to break this, from my experience at least, is to build an identity workshop, and you invite almost everyone involved with your design system, so especially designers, developers, but also product manager, communication, marketing, anyone who will be concerned by the design system. And there's many ways, to brainstorm and find a name for your design system. You clearly see that most of the famous design systems have a name like Carbon for IBM or Shopify with Polaris, etc. From my experience, once again, as soon as we started to call our design system something different than design system, we really succeeded in creating, in federating people and getting their interest, because the name maybe fits better to the company's values or identity, and it's maybe more, appealing for people, and they want to get involved in this design system because they contribute in choosing this name.
A more inclusive name.
Sorry?
A more inclusive name rather than just design system.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome, fantastic. Is there anyone from our panel that want to give us one final answer for this one? Any big challenges?
I think I raised, and I'll start again. Yeah. So this is exactly what I was talking to in my presentation, the situation where you go way too strict and people just start disengaging because this didn't meant like their expectations, their existing workflows. What we did in that situation, we invested into evolving the system into a different format where the experimentation would be much more encouraged or at least supported. And in general, what we did is we decentralized the whole system. We turned it into a federated one where all the designers and engineers would be owners of the system. They would contribute to it. We would together maintain and evolve the system. So this creates a different approach where every designer would actively participate in that process, and therefore they will be much more like empathetic with the design system. They understand it because they are contributing actively to it. And they also have they are not obliged to build every single pixel with the design system component. If we in the process that we developed for contributions, we accounted for the situations where you just need to experiment, or we consider that something could be a component, but we aren't sure yet. And then we allow you again to apply it, implement it in a simpler way. So removing all this burdens from our customers allowed us to turn the engagement on again. And in a short while, in fact, we had 100% of designers contributing to the system, which was a great success, and especially given the fact where it was before.
I think that's a quite nice thing to end on. Of people contributing, that's fantastic. People on the Zoom call, don't go anywhere, hang tight. Jules, thank you so much for coming on stage with me. We're just going to wrap up here. I've got a couple of things to announce before we go. Thank you. As if we didn't have enough technical issues, I almost ran out of battery as well, but we managed to solve that. I mean, the night could have just gone any better, could it? So I'm just going to leave these lovely people on here. God, also, I just moved myself out of camera. I'll just sit here then, shall I? So I'm going to tell you guys one thing. I am really looking forward to that drink that we go for afterwards. Not going to lie about that. So before we wrap up, I wanted to just basically say, first of all, I want to say thank you to the speakers. Thank you so much. Thank you to the people on the Zoom call. Thank you to Jules for being here in person. I want to thank everybody on the live stream for your patience, everyone in here for your patience. I think we also need to give a massive thank you to the people behind the screen who managed to... Yeah, it was a challenge, and I think that they've done a really great job. When we discussed how we were going to run this first event, we were contemplating whether we should try to do a hybrid one, and we decided not to, and then we decided to do it. And do you know what? We did it, ish. We learned a few things, and I think for the next time, we might do a couple of things slightly different. But overall, it's been fantastic. I think we had some really interesting learnings. Yes, all the recordings will be available. As I said, they will on YouTube on the live stream. I want to again say a massive thank you to Beamery, obviously, for allowing us to use this space and for serving us some delicious food and drinks. There are some drinks on the way out, so I know that's one for the road. For those of you who are in the audience here and feel like, do you know what, I kind of want to continue the conversation in a place where there are no technical issues. There is a pub that we're all going to go to. I'm going to whack that screen on right here for those of you who want to come. For everyone on the live stream, thank you very much. And I have two things that I want to do before I go. First of all, I want to announce that we have 2 more Design System London's event planned. Whether they're going to be online, hybrid, or whatever, that remains to be seen. But it's going to be September and December, so definitely follow us and look out for that one. I also have I thought until this point that it was kind of a little bit, oh, we're gone. It's over. This is like, you know when they start hoovering at the party and you're like, it's time for you to leave. They're like, they basically just unplugged me and now it's over. Are we even still on the live stream? Okay, we're all good apparently. So if someone says that, then it's all good. So basically, where was I? I thought at one moment that this was going to be a bit of a hush-hush thing, but actually, it's just been announced today. I don't know, nobody needs to see that. Nobody needs to see that. Unplug that. They are really trying back here to help and get the slide deck back in. For you guys on Zoom, you have no idea what's happening, but we basically had a lovely screen with about 1 million screenshots on the desktop. And there are people in this audience who are thinking, thank God it's not just me. So that's how a regular standard desktop looks like in 2022. Thank you very much. So back to my sort of what I thought was a hush-hush thing, but it has been announced today. We got, I'm going to say this right now because I tried this so many times and I'm going to get it wrong. World Design System Week. Yes. Nailed it. World Design System Week, 19th to 23rd of September. Oh my God. Yes, my brain is still here. If worlddesignSystemWeek.com. DesignSystemsWeek.com. Go and check it out. It's going to be for 1 week, obviously. There's going to be events everywhere. It's a lot of exciting stuff. We're going to be involved. Don't miss it. Definitely want to see that. And with that, I think that's it, yeah? Oh, yes, what's the name of the bar? Don't worry, I'll plug this in, but there is a bar we're going to. It's going to be amazing. Do take it, thank you. It's called Brew House and Kitchen and Cabin. There's a lot of ands. Brew House and Kitchen and a cabin. It's just around the corner. We're going to walk down there. Please do come and join us. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, live stream, for tuning in and for all your patience. And thank you, speakers.